One of the most revered, profound prayers in the Gospel is the Magnificat, the Canticle of Mary when she visited her cousin Elizabeth. The scene in Luke's Gospel describes the meeting of two unexpectedly pregnant women conversing with each other. Actually, it's the longest conversation between women in the Gospel. Elizabeth had been resigned to live with the disappointment of never having children, and now has to deal with this unexpected blessing. And Mary, in turn, has to figure out how to deal with this unexpected blessing, how to live with that blessing. And that really causes more difficult questions. How to explain this to Joseph? How will he react? What will the people in town of Nazareth think? An unmarried, pregnant woman? Will she have gossipers following her around town? This is not how she expected to live her life. Both Elizabeth and Mary needed to talk to each other, to offer each other encouragement and support, to go forward with more confidence and joy, despite the struggle that still faced them. A pregnant woman is not the usual face of a prophet, yet these two women were empowered to speak with prophetic voices. They met, and the force of their meeting leads them to proclaim God's blessings among the lowly and overthrows oppressive institutions. The two women beat the drum of God's world's revolution, starting with debased women, and then including all the starving, the powerless, and the oppressed. Elizabeth names the grace of her own life with her pregnancy so that when Mary comes calling, she is prepared to recognize and name the grace of another. Blessed among you, among women, she tells Mary, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. From then, we hear Mary's Magnificat, joyfully proclaiming God's gracious, effective compassion for the lowly. This ordinary Galilean woman stands in the long line of Jewish tradition female singers, from Miriam with her tambourine to Deborah, Hannah, and Judith, who also sang dangerous songs of salvation. The canticle starts praising God with deep personal love, and then reflects God's victorious deeds for the oppressed community, a powerful link between the tradition of love of God and love of neighbor. The two come together in this prayer. Mary's song is a prayer of a poor woman. She proclaims God's greatness with her whole being because the Holy One of Israel, regarding her lowly state, has done great things for her. She is a poor, first-century peasant woman living in occupied territory, struggling for survival and dignity against victimization. Yet she is imbued with Jewish faith, and she sings of justice in the name of God. In many respects, Mary's song predates the mandate for change, which Jesus proclaimed in the Beatitudes. Think about it. The message is really the same: the upheaval of society to favor the oppressed. Through the centuries, this promise of liberation continues to this day. I found a most interesting description of the canticle written by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who was killed by the Nazis in 1945. He wrote, "The Magnificat is at once the most passionate, the wildest, one might even say the most revolutionary Advent hymn ever sung. It is not the gentle, tender, dreamy Mary, whom we often see in paintings. This is the compassionate, proud, enthusiastic Mary who speaks out here. This song has none of the sweet, nostalgic, or even playful tones of some of our Christmas carols. It is instead a hard, strong, inexorable song about collapsing thrones and humbled lords of this world, about the power of God and the powerlessness of humankind. These are the tones of women prophets of the Old Testament that now come to life in Mary's voice. End of quote. We pray Mary's words each evening in the office. And I wonder sometimes if our familiarity with this prayer lessens its power in our hearts as we pray it. Do we really mean those words? Are we really praying for a world turned upside down? In our prayers for our sisters in Nicaragua, for example, and all of the oppressed people around our world, do we see the indirect connection with the tyrant being overturned as we pray these words? The intent of the canticle resonates with CSA's mission. Different wording perhaps, but perfect alignment with the values. For we too are committed to the transformation of the world, systemic change for the quality of life, justice for the economically poor, the furtherance of women's role in church and society. And we too are committed to mutuality, inclusivity, and collaboration. Just think of some of the programs and relationships we form as a community. The associate relationship, Sisters and Seekers, Breakfast for Women, Conversations of the Heart, just to name a few. And think of our chapter 26 statement, which impels love's call to, quote, lean into the headwinds of global injustice. The values are all there. This alignment, of course, is not accidental because we aim to further the mission of Jesus, which is the intent of Mary's prayer. Looking at our world today, all the situations that are going on around us, Mary's canticle is more appropriate and relevant than ever. Sisters and brothers, as we reflect on our world today, we must take this prayer to heart. We must say what we mean and mean what we say. It is now our time to make this prayer a reality, feeding the starving, dismantling the powerful tyrants in our world, uplifting the unhoused, those shunned by society, extending mercy and love to the downtrodden, working for the vision of Jesus, for a just, compassionate world. This is now our task, our call. We cannot let our limitations, physical, whatever they may be, excuse us from that call. We may not be able to go to a rally or write letters to our congresspersons, but we have power, the power of prayer, and never underestimate that power. As I close, I'm reminded of a story of the great Italian composer of famous operas like Madame Butterfly. When Giacomo Puccini was fairly young, he contracted cancer. He decided to spend his last days writing his final opera, which is one of his most polished works. His friends and colleagues told him often that his illness required rest, not hard work. Puccini would also respond, "I'm going to do as much as I can on my great masterpiece, and it's up to you, my friends, to finish it if I don't." Unfortunately, Puccini died before the opera was completed. So now his friends had a choice. They could forever mourn his loss, or they could return to life as usual, or they could build on what he had started. So they chose the latter. In 1926, at the famous opera house La Scala in Milan, Puccini's opera was performed for the first time, conducted by the very famous Arturo Toscanini. Don't you love those Italian words? When it came to the part of the opera where Puccini had stopped writing before his death, Toscanini stopped conducting. He turned around to look with eyes swelling up with tears, and he said to the large audience, "This is where the master ends." And he wept. But after a few moments, he lifted his head, turned back to the orchestra, smiled broadly, and said, "And this is where his friends begin." And he finished conducting the opera. This is our task now, to continue the work that Jesus started. May we continue that revolutionary dream of Jesus and Mary, remembering God's promise to be with us until the end of time. So, sisters and brothers, let's get to work. We have a lot to do.